Okay, so this is day 2 of our lesson on creating the vector landscape. So I'm going to open up my file. I'm in Illustrator. So make sure that you launched Illustrator. Should be your orange icon AI on the dock. You launch it and just open. So go File, open your project. These days it's better to go File, Open, or Command O rather than just double clicking, because Illustrator's gotten a little glitchy when you double click your file. So I find it's just safer to go File, Open, and then find your file. And let's see where I saved mine. So you should find yours probably on the document area or your own external drive. Right now I have mine on my external drive, so I'm finding it there. And there it is, titled last name first initial dash landscape. Open that up and we'll see where I got to and what else I can do on this. Okay, so I got this funny looking landscape here. I'm just gonna use the zoom tool and zoom in. You can also zoom in, so for using the zoom tool at the bottom, and also you can notice that when I mouse over certain tools, it will have the keyboard shortcut key in parentheses, so you can start memorizing those keyboard shortcuts. That'll really speed up your workflow. But with the zoom tool, by default, there's a plus there. You click and you're zooming in. If you hold Option, you see a minus appear. You click, you're zooming out. Also, some people like to use it by clicking and dragging to zoom in, clicking and dragging down to zoom in, clicking and dragging up to zoom out. Or you don't even have to go to the zoom tool. You can stay on whatever tool you're currently on, usually the selection tool, and you can use Command plus on your keyboard to zoom in, Command minus to zoom out. And I like to use the space bar to toggle into my hand tool. There's actually the hand tool here, but I never actually choose it. You never even have to press H to choose it, because you can always, whatever tool you're on, usually you can always hold the space bar and then you're in the hand tool and you can click drag to move around. And I'm on my selection tool now, so I can select on whatever object and move it around. Okay, so I made a sun here, and I was talking last time about how you can use the tool that's right next to the selection tool, the direct selection tool. It's a very important tool. What's the difference between the selection tool and the direct selection tool? Well, what can the selection tool do? First of all, the selection tool obviously can select, so you can click to select whole objects with the selection tool. What else can you do? You can mouse over an object and drag to move the object. What else can you do? Well, while you're in bounding box mode, where you're actually showing this structure, this is the bounding box, you can rotate. If you mouse outside of the bounding box, you get this curvy arrow, so you can rotate. It tells you the angle you're rotating at. You can, what else can you do? You can scale. So I can mouse over a handle of the bounding box and I can scale disproportionately, so I can make it shorter or taller, wider. If I want to constrain the proportions, what key do I need to hold? I need to hold down on the Shift key and drag out and constrain the proportions, just like that. And my favorite way to duplicate, remember that one? You click on the object with your selection tool and you hold down what key? Option, and then you have a duplicate tool right there. So you hold down the Option key and you click and drag out, release the mouse, then release the Option key. If you release the Option key too soon, what happens? I'm releasing the Option key now before I release the mouse, and I have just moved my object rather than duplicating it. I'm going to scale, holding Shift, scaling, zooming out here. Remember how to bring objects in front. If I want the cloud to be in front of the sun, I can go to Object, Arrange, Bring to Front, or there's also transformations we looked at the other day where you can go to Transform, Reflect to flip the cloud the other way like that. That's flipping it along the vertical versus flipping it horizontal. But let's say I don't want to do that, so I'm going to cancel that. I just want to bring it to the front, so you can go Object, Arrange, Bring to Front, or memorize those shortcuts. You can also right-click an object and get to Transform and Arrange there as well from the context menu. So I'm going to do Bring to Front, so that comes to the front. Okay, so that's what the selection tool can do. Lots of jobs the selection tool can do, especially when you're in bounding box mode. If you go to view, you can, some people think the bounding box is a little clunky and they just want to see the path. In that case, you would be hiding the bounding box. And then your selection tool loses all of its jobs. It can only do, what can it do now? It doesn't have a bounding box to scale and rotate, but it can still select, click outside to deselect, select, and then you see just the path is lit up. Just the outline of the shape. So you can select and you see the path. I don't know if you can see the path there very easily. Where you see the anchor point. So you select. And what else can it do? It can select and it can move. That's pretty much it. Now that's the those are the jobs of the selection tool. That's the selection tool's specialization. If you want to do those other jobs, then you'd have to either go back to bounding box mode under view, show bounding box, or if you prefer to be not using bounding box mode, that's what the rotate tool and the scale tool are good for. That's their specialization. So that's those days when the economy is good. Everybody has their own specialization. See, the rotate tool rotates and people get hired for their own specialization. The scale tool can scale just by dragging objects from any part of the path. But when the economy is bad, they want that one person that can do it all. You see those in those job ads where they want everything. They want the graphic designer and the web designer and the web developer and the programmer all in one person. So that's what when you go and turn view and show bounding box on, now you got that selection tool does a lot more. It scales and it rotates as well as selects and moves and deselects and all of that good stuff that the selection tool does. So selection tool is our friend. How about the direct selection tool? What's the direct selection tool good for? That's different than the selection tool. So with the direct selection tool, you actually can click on individual points and drag on them to change the shape. So direct selection tool is good for clicking on individual points to alter your shape. So, let me see. So be sure when you are selecting with your direct selection tool that you are clicking and releasing first, because let's say if you click in the middle, that will select all the points all the points will be solid. That means that they're all selected. And then you could actually move the entire shape while all the points are selected, just like you can with the selection tool. If you want to select an individual point, the trick is to click and release. Because if you want to select an individual point over here, if you just click and drag, you're still going to be moving all the points together. So it's important for when you're using the direct selection tool and you want to select an individual point, you click, release, and then click drag. Then you'll be able to move that individual point. So click and release and click drag. Well, once you do that, then now I can just click drag, because now see how the only one point is solid and the rest are they look like they're lit up, they're hollow. That means these are not selected. The ones that look white are not selected. The ones that are solid, the one that's solid is selected. So that can be moved. So I can go here and just have like a variable sizes on my shape here. Okay, I want to make another shape. So I want to go to my shape tool here and go and choose my rectangle tool and click and hold on it and choose my ellipse tool. And then I want to drag out a perfect circle. And I'm going to need to hold down a key for that. So I'm going to hold down the shift key and drag out a perfect circle. And I'm going to put a gradient on this. I'm going to turn off the stroke. So I click the stroke to the front, click none. And I want a gradient on this. So I'm going to go to under window. I'm going to go to my gradient panel. Bring that up. And it remembered my previous gradient, but I want to change my gradient. Maybe I want to keep this color that I have here and drag that into my gradient. So now I've got a linear gradient and I've got way too many color stops. So I'm just going to throw some of these out so I can click and drag and just remove some of these color stops that I don't want. And maybe add one and change the color. So I can double click over here and choose a darker color. I could also grab my swatches panel, swatches, under window in alphabetical order, and drag in a swatch that I might like to use. Maybe I like this color better than this color, so I'll throw this one out. And then I want to make this a radial gradient. So I'll switch from linear in my gradient panel, linear to radial. And then I can use my gradient tool to kind of adjust the spread. I can also adjust the little color stops here to change how the colors are blending. But if I want to redraw it, I can go to my gradient tool. And there's my tool gadget. I can drag it bigger. I can move it around so the brightest colors are on one side. And then I can go to my selection tool just to make the tool disappear. And if I want to center this ball here to the sun here, or the sun rays there, I can do that. So I can select the ball, hold down shift, select the sun rays, and I can center them to each other using the align panel. From properties, you will have align options appear right in properties, but there's also an align panel. I actually have it out already, but again, that would be under which one of these menu drop downs in alphabetical order? Window, right? Align, and I have my align panel. And if I want all my options to show, I would go to the options right now they're showing, but a lot of times you bring up the align panel and not all the options are hidden, so you use that little fly out button and choose show options, and then you will see options here: align to selection, align to key object, and align to artboard. In this case, I might want to align to selection, and I can use my align objects button here, the horizontal align center, vertical align center buttons work. And I can also find those same buttons here in properties. And these are my options: align to selection, horizontal align center, and vertical align center. Well, they're not exactly what I want, so I want to kind of just eyeball it. There we go. And maybe I want to change the outline, the stroke color, so I can, on the rays, so I can maybe click the fly out and choose something a little brighter maybe. That's kind of nice. And then if I want the ball of the sun and the rays to stick together so that I can just click and grab it from any part of it and have it be a unit rather than separate pieces, because now if I want to move the sun over, I do that and they're separate. So I'm going to Command Z to undo. Thank goodness for Command Z. And then I want to select both parts. So I've got the rays selected. I'm going to hold Shift and select the little sphere looking part. And I'm going to just go to Object, Group. This one's an easy keyboard shortcut to remember. What is that? Command G, G for Group, very easy. You can memorize that right now. And now wherever I click, now they move together. If I change my mind and I wanted to move them apart from each other, I can always go to Object, Ungroup, Shift, Command G. That would be the shortcut for that. It tells you right there. If you don't know those symbols, it's okay. I'm going to give you a handout to help you memorize those symbols later. But if I do Ungroup, now again I can click on the parts separately with my selection tool, move them separately, but I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that, Command Z to undo the ungroup, so now they're group again. And this got pushed to the background, so I'm going to do Command Shift right bracket to bring that to the front. Okay, it's like partly cloudy skies here. You can do the weather. Okay, maybe I'll shrink this a little bit, and maybe I want some water. I can take the sky perhaps and duplicate it, or no, I'll redraw it. Now that I selected that sky shape, my gradient for that sky is back and remembered there in the gradient panel. I'm going to take the rectangle tool and draw out another shape with that water. And actually I'll bring the land to the front with Command Shift right bracket, and think about how I might draw this gradient to reflect the sky. So I'll take my gradient tool and redraw it. I'm going to hold Shift to draw it straight and kind of draw, well, I'll draw down like this, maybe that. Actually, let me take off this white here, and then I can adjust this, maybe make it longer, stretch it longer, move these little guys around here. Maybe this can go up here like that. So it can start to look like a reflection on the water. Well, maybe a little white would be good. Let me just add a little bit of a bright white color on this here. And maybe I'll bring the I'll make the at 100%. Well, not 100%, maybe 80%. Okay, so actually, I could also duplicate the blue. Maybe I need a little bit of blue. So if you option drag, you can duplicate a color. Yeah, so maybe a little line of blue at the top will be nice, blending in. Okay, and then maybe I want a reflection, so I can select the land and hold option and drag out a duplicate. And then since this is a reflection, it can be distorted, so I can just drag from the top down to make it look sort of flat on the water. And this should be behind, this should be in front, the real land. So I'm going to do Command Shift right bracket, so that's in front. And then this one, actually I could send this to the back and see how that will look, because remember, part of this gradient is transparent, right? So if I send this shape all the way to the back behind the water, then that should show through. So I'm going to right click this shape and go to arrange, send to back, or I could have used the keyboard shortcut Shift Command left bracket. So now that is behind, but I guess there was not enough transparency, because now like I have to play with the transparency of more of these stops to see anything. Let's see, why is it let's see, this is, let's make it as more transparent. Why is this? Oh, it's because there's double here, because this shape could be a little more transparent. There. Now, there. So now we're seeing through the water. So that's one way to do it. Or I could bring this shape to the front. Let's see. I'm gonna lock this guy. This guy's getting all messed up. There we go. Okay, let me lock it. Command 2. And then let's say I put my water back in front, and then I lock the water. Command 2, because remember, object lock selection is the same as Command 2, but I can click lock there. And then this, I want to, let's say I want to bring that to the front this time. So I do right click. Actually, maybe I'll just try bringing it a step forward. So arrange, bring forward. No, it didn't go all the way. Arrange, bring forward. Or you could do Command right bracket. Let's see, Command right bracket till it comes there. So now it's forward. So another way I could make this look like a reflection is simply bringing down the opacity on this shape. So if I select this shape, then I can get to opacity right from my properties panel from the appearance section. You can also get that under window from the transparency panel and be able to control your opacity here. Also, you might like to show your control panel. It's a handy context sensitive panel, just like the properties, and sometimes the control panel has more options. So if you go to window control, then you'll have your fill and your stroke options here. You'll have opacity there. So I can, while I have this shape selected, my reflection shape, I can bring down the opacity like that. So that's just another way to make a reflection. A few different ways to make a reflection. Kind of cool, huh? Okay, so we're working on a landscape with a background, midground, and foreground. Maybe I want to have something in the very front that's up close, maybe some blades of grass or a tree or something. So you want to think about composition, what you could put in the front that's more detailed, that's larger. Maybe I'll just keep it simple. Let's see. I might do triangle. Remember, I can choose the polygon tool to make a triangle, and I can click, and then I just change the number of sides to 3, and then I say okay there. And maybe I want to make this triangle look like a blade of grass, so I can make it very tall. And maybe I want the stroke to be a dark green rather than a black, so I can double click on that and make it like a dark green stroke. And then I'll just scale it bigger. And maybe I want to use the width tool to change the width of the stroke. So remember the width tool there, how you can then mouse over the stroke and click and drag out to make the stroke thicker in places. Click and click, and so you're mousing over the path, and you'll get this little ball, and you just click and drag out to make it thicker, click and drag inwards to make it thinner. And if you have too many in places and you got weird bulges, you can always select the little ball and press delete. But using this variable width is really nice, because then it will make your work look more hand-drawn, more organic, less computer generated. And then, okay, so then under the width tool, there is that whole slew of other tools you should try out, like the warp tool I showed last time. Warp tool is great. You can click on that, and then I like to first use my selection tool to select an object, because then it will isolate that object. If I don't have that object selected and then I take the warp tool and I click on it, it's doing fine now, but see, then it will just grab whatever. So you could do that, but I like to just be sure that it's only gonna warp what I want it to warp. So I select first, and then I take the warp tool, and then I can give it some curve by clicking and dragging, and it's gonna generate points. And you can change the size of any of these tools. All these tools are related, starting with the warp tool. So they all kind of are controlled the same way. You can double click on each one of them and change their options, like the intensity, if you want a stronger pull on your force, if you want it just to work faster, you can bring up the intensity, or if it's too much, you can bring it down. I'm gonna just leave it though for now. And maybe duplicate this. Now to change the shape of the tool, you select, and if you hold down the option key, you gotta hold down the option key for these tools. Hold down the option key, you'll see this kind of little L appear, and you can click drag up to make the tool bigger, or down to make it smaller. So if I want to kind of bend a larger part of this, then I can drag like that. Okay. And if I want a perfect circle again, I can always double click on the tool and make them equal, like 1.6 wide, 1.6 in height. Now it will be a perfect circle. And if I want to keep the perfect circle, I can hold down not only Option to change the size, but Shift to constrain, and then drag up in a diagonal and down in a diagonal. Drag up to make the tool bigger, down in a diagonal to make it smaller. So with the smaller tool, you can do more like little nooks and crannies if you want to give something texture. I don't know if I want texture on that, but that's okay. There's other tools you can try out here. Like a fun one to try would be, let me just make another shape here, an ellipse. And then well, before I do the twirl, let me just quickly go over making an elliptical gradient on my ellipse, and then I'll go to the twirl tool. So I want to make a gradient again on this tool. So I'm going to bring the fill to the front, and I want to drag in this color. So, and then I'm going to change this to be a radial gradient and throw out some of these colors I don't want. I'll change this color to a darker green. So I selected this color here, the magenta, and then I double clicked over here on the fill, and now I can choose a darker green. Okay, so I've got this radial gradient. If I go to the gradient tool, you can see that my radial gradient is a perfect circle, but I wanted to show you that I can change it to be elliptical by dragging the black circle down, and I can scale it up so it's gonna match. You can also, if you rotate, you can rotate your gradient, but I want to keep it so that it kind of matches the shape there. Okay, but going back to our tools that began with the width tool, all of these tools that from the warp tool on, they're all related. The twirl tool is really fun to use. You should try it. I'm going to make my twirl tool bigger by holding down Option and Shift, and so then I can go to any part of this shape while it's selected and click and hold and make little twirls. If I want to make the twirl go the opposite way, I can double click on the twirl tool, and I can change twirl rate to a negative number by putting a minus there. Say okay, and now it's twirling the other way. So I can just twirl, and make something kind of interesting. But be careful of these tools here, because they can generate a lot of anchor points fast, as you can see, and that can be messy and cause your system to slow down. So you really want to only use anchor points when you really need them. Now, if I really like the look of this artwork, I could say, well, it's worth it to have all those anchor points bogging down the system. But we're going to learn to make cleaner artwork. You could definitely clean things up with other tools, like the eraser tool will work. Later we'll get to the pen tool, and you'll have really precise power. You'll be a master of precision. With the eraser tool, again, I want to select my object that I want to erase, then take the eraser tool and erase. So I can kind of erase things I don't need. Now I have a little piece of something here that I could play with, delete maybe. So I've got some weird stuff going on here now. So eraser tool is kind of fun. Now if you don't have anything selected and you take the eraser tool, it's gonna erase maybe more things. Well, actually I have the water locked, so that's why it's not erasing that. But if let's say, let me Command C. Let's say I unlock all, object, unlock all, and I deselect all. I'm gonna click outside to deselect all, and then I take my eraser and I go like that. That just erased everything. So I'm going to Command Z that to undo. So it's good to select what you want to erase and then use your eraser tool to erase things that you don't want. You can also kind of clean up the edges. That way, if you want, you don't have to do this. You can have stuff hanging off the edges for this assignment, but that's one way to do it. If you want to erase in a straight line, you can hold shift and you got to just drag in a straight line, and then you'll erase things in a straight line. Or let's say I want to erase all of this, so I select all of it. I took my selection tool, drag, select around it, then I take my eraser tool and drag there, so I can make a straight edge. So whatever was selected got erased. Okay, so I got some weird stuff going on here. I'm gonna lock my water again, Command 2, so I can select a bunch of stuff and delete it if I don't want all of that stuff there. So we've got some weird plant life growing here, so that could be what I'm going for there. Maybe I'll duplicate some more of these strange grass things here, bring some of these to the front, maybe Command Shift right bracket. So, or some weird, maybe it's some kind of sea plant that's growing in the foreground. All right, I'll go with that. Okay, so we have a landscape with a background, midground, and foreground. You want to save that. And if you want to do the extra credit, remember to go File, Export, and choose any of these options. Export as, choose Format PNG, select Use Artboards to crop off the edges, and save to your documents area, click Export. And for turning in your work to the Dropbox, you want to go File and then Save As, and then choose PDF from Format. But make sure that you save your original Illustrator document. That's precious. That's gonna give you the quality, the highest quality version of your work. So you want to keep that for sure. But for turning in your work, make a PDF, and Leslie will help you to turn that into the Dropbox when you're done. So you save that as a PDF. But remember to only make a PDF at the end when you're done. You don't want to work in the PDF. Okay, so enjoy making your landscapes.